Hi everyone! This week we're going to be having a look at Cosmos again, and in particular harvesting Cosmos. I've had a really good question this week, which was, where on the plant should I be cutting? If you're wanting to take some flowers indoor for arranging, or you're a flower farmer and you have lots of Cosmos that you need to cut for orders, where on the plant is the best place to cut? Because what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to cut that flower, but then you want the plant to keep producing new long stems in the future, so it's important to cut in just the right place. So let's go and have a look. So first up to say is that Cosmos is a fantastic plant for growing in your garden for an abundance of cut flowers all through the summer period up until those first frosts. And as you can see here, there is so much lovely ferny green foliage on the plants. They can get really quite bushy and take up lots of room with lots of flowering stems. So let's have a look in a little bit more detail. So as you can see here, each plant has lots and lots of very bushy, lovely ferny foliage coming on top. And you can see on this one here, this is a flowering stem. It's not quite out yet, but that's where it's coming from. Over here again, another really bushy plant, lots of lovely foliage. So here we go, here's a bud that's just about cracking open. Great stage to cut. And you can follow the stem all the way down the plant, and you'll find that it joins onto the plant about here, 30 centimetres down. So you could cut there. That will give you enough for a jam jar arrangement, but it's not going to give you a good enough stem length for a bouquet. And what is going to happen if I just cut it there? Well, you will promote more flowering stems, but only from where you cut, so only 30 centimetres down on the plant. So the next stems that are going to be flowering are not going to be very long. They're just coming from that top section of the plant. So to get future longer stems, we need to be cutting from much, much further down. So we need to follow much further down on the plant and cut lower. So if I was going to cut lower on this particular one, then I would take away all of this top growth, so you would get side branches with buds here that haven't come out yet, and you might be thinking that's an awful lot of plant to be removing for this one flower. But actually, if you're making a bouquet, the foliage here, the ferny foliage, is just as important for filling out that bouquet as the flowers are. And if you've got lots of side branches with buds, then these will open up over the course of a week in a vase as well. So you'll have these ones coming out flowering first, and then if they're slightly cracked open, you'll have the other buds coming out too. And by cutting further down, you will also promote longer stems when it comes to regrowth. So let's go and have a look at some Apricot Cosmos and see some cutting in action. So here we are in the Cosmos patch. This is Cosmos apricota, and because I haven't had orders over the weekend, I've been away and it's been raining lots of the Cosmos have come out, and quite a few of them are petal damaged, so I'm going to have to cut them back. But having a look at these now, I need to harvest some for today's bouquet. So these are two fully out. We need to look for some that are just starting to crack open like these, and they are continue to open in the vase. And we're going to have a look at where to cut them. So you can see here that this is the top flower here that's going to open. We want to cut this flower for an arrangement. And if I had a jam jar posy, I wouldn't really need a very long stem length. So you could think that I could just cut it somewhere about here. And that would give me about 30 centimetres of stem if I cut it about there. But we don't want to do that, because if I only cut 30 centimetres of stem, quite a short length on this plant, then what you'll do is you will get new flowering stems coming, but they'll be short also. We want to encourage really long new stems, so we have to look further down on the plant where to cut. So I'm just following all the way down here to show you. And quite near the bottom, we've still got space to cut. Down here you can see that there are leaves on either side. So this is the base of the plant down here on the ground that you can see, and just up from that is some side branching. So if I cut just above where the new side shoots are coming out there, that'll promote a really nice long new stem. And you will have to sacrifice some of these buds, or if they're quite close to the top, then they may well open up in your flower arrangement that you've done. So let's go and cut this. We'll go and follow it all the way down the plant here, further and further down to where we were before. So you can see here that that is where our two side shoots were coming out. So I am just going to snip it just above there. And that's given me a really nice long stem. It's probably about 60 centimeters in length. And that will be great for flower arranging. And now we should get some new stems coming on the plant. It'll take a couple of weeks, but you'll get a nice new long stem. So you can see there, that's where I cut just there. And that'll grow up through the horizontal netting and create a new flower for me in a few weeks' time.
So when I was talking earlier, you will have noticed that I was next to lots of green, ferny foliage of cosmos and you weren't seeing that many flowers. And that is the ideal scenario when you are a flower grower cutting for orders, because you're wanting to cut them as soon as they crack bud and get them away into your orders for florists or into bouquets. If we're at this stage, then these have been pollinated by bees and they're too fully out to have a long vase life. And this happens after you've been away for a weekend or you've been away for a week on holiday, and they look absolutely beautiful, and this is what you'd want them to look like if you were just enjoying them in your garden. But as a flower farmer, we need to cut them back after periods like this so that we get future flowers coming through. And I can cut them and enjoy them just for me, or I can give them to family and friends, but they're just a bit too open for going into florist buckets, or they are going into bouquets. The exception to this would be if you are cutting for weddings and events and you needed them to be fully out for that particular day. So here's a good example. This cosmos is too far out to use in my orders. It won't last long in a vase. So we will trace it down the plant all the way down. So this is a good 60 centimeters again. And I have found a few sets of leaves towards the base of the plant that you can see here, and that is where I will be wanting to make my cut, and that will promote new flowers coming through in the coming weeks. So it is quite drastic. It's taken quite a few side branches there, and it's got some buds and it's got this flower at the top, but I needed to do that to promote these new long stems to come through. And if I want to use it in the house, I would just need to strip off those bottom leaves just to maximise the vase life and keep the water nice and clear and not from it going murky. And I'll enjoy that for a couple of days just for me.
So we've talked about where to cut our cosmos on the plant to get those long flowering stems, but how about conditioning? What should you be doing? Well, when I go down to the flower patches, I take my nice clean buckets with me, and these are full of a few inches of water, so it comes up to about there on the bucket. I don't fill them too full at this stage just for ease of carrying them around and so they're not too heavy. But once I get them back up to the garage where I will condition them for several hours or overnight, I then top the buckets up with some more fresh water so that they're quite deep, the stems that are sitting in them then, so they can have a nice big drink. But I think one of the most important things is just to take that bucket with you of water out into the garden, into the flower patches, so that these flowers, when they're cut, they're never ever without a water source. They're just straight into water and able to drink. And I think that that is a good key to conditioning them really well and making sure that they have as long a vase life as possible. So I'm going to cut a few stems just now to put into the buckets. So I've got a nice flowering stem. This is slightly more open than I would like it to be, but it's not quite there yet and hasn't been pollinated by the bees. So that is still an okay stage to cut for flowers in a vase today on the stall. But I will include some that are slightly more close, so they'll open up over the course of the next few days for people to enjoy in the vase as well. The most important thing to do when conditioning before you put it in your bucket is that there's lots of this ferny foliage at the bottom, and we don't want that below the water line, so we need to just remove that. So take it up as tall as you want on the plant. Just make sure that you think, how deep is my water going to be? And you don't want any of that sitting underneath it. So there you go, I've taken all of that off there, and that's left a nice stem that can go and sit in the water now. If you were to leave that ferny foliage on the stem, then it can make the water more likely to just go murky, and bacteria can grow in the water and things, and that's not going to help the vase life of your flowers. You want to condition them well in nice, clean water. So let's pop that into our bucket there. And then that can go in with the other cosmos that I'm going to cut in a minute, and then off to my stone garage where it's nice and cool and dark, and they can condition in there overnight. If you haven't got time to condition them overnight, several hours in the day is absolutely fine as well. Just maximize it, whatever you can manage. Overnight ideal, 3 to 4 hours in the day if possible. So you might need to cut your flowers, for instance, in the morning. You might have extra orders that have come in, so just get them cut early in the morning and then give them a good 3 to 4 hours conditioning then. So I hope that was helpful this morning, having a look at how I cut my cosmos. And the main take-home message is to cut deeply into your cosmos plant, and don't be afraid to do it. You're not going to do any damage to it as long as you cut above a set of leaves, just above it, so that it promotes it into creating new side branches and long stems for your new flowers. Then your cosmos plant will keep on going and producing great new flowers for you all through the season up until those first frosts. They're fantastic plants. They're bushy, full of lovely flowers all summer long. So keep on giving them a nice deep cut and you will be rewarded this summer.